All right. Welcome to Livyana Talks Live. What we stand for, like I always say, is exactly in our name. Livyana stands for live because you are not alone. That is why we built the first holistic platform around health. And our mission is to connect you, be it a patient or a caregiver, to your health community. Why? To bring back hope, love, and faith. For less than $1 a day, you can connect to your community right now. Now, on Monday, it's World Diabetes Awareness Day. That happens Monday. So this live is all around diabetes. Because of it, we're giving away a free 3-month trial. All you got to do is scan the barcode in the top right and put in the code DW2022 in the next 48 hours, and you get a 3 free-month trial. That's a $90 value. $90 value. And I'm going to add one more thing. If you can guess what DW is, the first person to put it in the chat gets 1 year free of Livyana to be able to connect on that platform and get help, support, love, faith, hope into their health journey. So before we start, the ones who have seen me before know I like to get into facts. I like to dig into the statistics. So in doing that, let's talk about some data. All this right now is according to the CDC. According to the CDC, there are a total of 37.3 million people that have diabetes. That's 11% of the population of the US. Out of that, diagnosed, 28.7 million people are diagnosed. Believe it or not, 8.5 million people are undiagnosed. Now let's talk about pre-diabetes, something I'm sure people have heard of. A total of 96 million people 18 years or older have prediabetes. That's about 38% of the US population. At 65 years or older, 26.4 million people have diabetes or prediabetes, sorry. That's roughly 48%. Now let's go into demographics. Let's talk about what's this breakdown from an ethnic perspective, ethnicity demographics. There are 1.4 million new cases of diabetes in 2019, according to the CDC. Out of that, white non-Hispanic, 860,000. Black non-Hispanic, 181,000. Asian non-Hispanic, 71,000. And for the Hispanic, which relates to me and Marlon Toruno, my brother, 261,000. According to the CDC and the TD1 index, which is type 1 diabetes index, 1.45 million Americans are living with type 1 diabetes, which directly relates to Marlon, who's on the show today. According to the type 1 diabetes or TD1 index, 2.1 million people in the US are expected to have type 1 by 2040. 2.1 million people by 2040. Less than 1/3 of the people with TD1, type 1 diabetes, in the US are consistently achieving target blood glucose control levels. Okay? Less than 1/3 are consistently achieving those targets, which I'm sure Marlon's going to go into a little bit more. So how serious is this? With all these stats, CDC, TD1, really, where are we? Well, in 2019, according to the CDC, it's the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. 7th leading cause of death. Ladies and gentlemen, that's big. That's big, right? So today, as promised, we're going to be talking about diabetes and type 1 diabetes, and it's our story. My story, my brother's story, our family's story. So Marlon, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here today.
No, thank you for wanting to share our story really to the general community. I remember, when we were kids, when you got first diagnosed, and I kind of wanted you to go into that story, right? How did you think something was going on, or how did you think that something was weird? I vividly remember one thing, but I want to see if you captured it in the beginning of where this started.
Okay. So basically, well, I want to kind of go back to earlier before I got diabetes. There was this. So I know someone who has diabetes, and we're friends with other friends, but he was taking insulin, and I was probably, I don't know, 12 years old. I didn't know what diabetes was. I knew it had something to do with sugar, or something with sugar. I had no idea anything more than that. I didn't know. And I remember one time we were at his house, and he was taking injections. I didn't know what these injections were. At the time, I didn't have diabetes. Um, Perfectly healthy boy at 12 years old. And I saw him taking it, and it was really strange to see because I knew it had to do with sugar. I knew there was, it was a health condition that some people had. It was the first time I ever saw it. And something, I don't know, inside me was kind of like, I don't know, like time froze, and I was just kind of watching him take the insulin. I was like, man, this is kind of weird. And I don't know if it was like foreseeing the future. Sometimes I think about it, maybe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was my first exposure to like anybody with diabetes in real life, and I still didn't know what it was. So many years later, I was diagnosed around 2005, 2004, 2005. I don't remember, but it hit me out of nowhere. It was like one day I was fine, the next day I was not. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Um, I knew something was off. Basically, what was going on, I've always been very active, exercised every single day. As far as diet, I don't think I was too unhealthy, but a typical teenager diet kind of thing is not the healthiest, I would say, I guess. Um, but I was perfectly healthy, exercising every day, lifting weights, all these things. I've always been thin my whole life, and I was looking into like, I need to gain more weight. I'm taking in all these calories. I'm eating as much as I can. And I'm not gaining any weight. And so I decided to, okay, let me take some supplements. And I ended up taking a weight gainer drink. And I looked at the back label, and it says, do not take if you're diabetic. And it was funny because I looked at it, I was like, well, I'm not diabetic. So I took it. And basically what it was a weight gainer shake. It was 2,000 calories per drink. One drink, 2,000 calories. This is on top of the meals I was eating. And it was 300 grams of carbohydrates. If you don't know how many carbs you should be taking in a day, a lot of people especially today, probably don't take in 300 grams if they're watching their weight and stuff like that. But that's a lot for one drink. So I was probably taking in like 700 grams of carbohydrates per day in total, combined with my meals. So anyway, almost a week, not even a week into taking this shake, I start developing these symptoms. And it's now that I know, but back then I didn't know, but it's classic symptoms of diabetes. Excessive urination, excessive weight loss, fatigue, very low energy, not being able to focus, all super typical symptoms of diabetes. So I went 2 weeks not knowing what I had. Um, I'm gonna get into details of like what I felt and during this 2 week time span. At night, I ended up getting very thirsty. First of all, I started getting very thirsty. I will be drinking, honestly, gallons and gallons of liquids a day. I was just thirsty. My mouth was a desert. At night, I started keeping a big glass of ice water next to the bed because I would wake up multiple times a night, just parched, Just
Mm.
my mouth was a desert. And drinking this ice cold water at any time was the closest I could think of like a drug, uh,
Wow.
what a drug would feel like. It was such a refreshing feeling. I've never experienced this kind of feeling with this. But at night, also, I would wake up with insane cramps in my calves. Um,
Mm.
so my body was very dehydrated. My electrolytes were probably all out of whack because of this. Potassium levels probably all crazy. So I knew something was wrong, but I kept on just kind of like living my life. I was going to school. I was in college, in art school at the time, and I would go to school, and I couldn't focus in school. I had no energy. I didn't have enough energy to type on the keyboard. It was insane.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I don't know. It still didn't click to me like something is really wrong here. So I
Mhm.
just kept on living. I kept on eating normally. Um, I would, go to Chipotle, eat a burrito, which is crazy to think about now. Like, can you imagine a type 1 diabetic eating Chipotle, not drinking diet drinks or anything like that? You're just drinking regular drinks and you're taking no insulin. It's crazy. It's like, it's dangerous, very dangerous. Um, so I
Mhm.
went 2 weeks like this, and I started losing strength. I was really into exercise, and I noticed that my strength was diminishing very quickly. Um, and one day, I was thinking, you know what? Maybe this is all in my head. Maybe I'm just thinking these things up, and maybe I do have the energy. So I was laying on the couch. I get up, and I'm like, you know what? Screw this. It's all in my head. I get down and start doing push-ups. I I went from doing 80 push-ups straight, just straight through. In 2 weeks, I couldn't do more than two push-ups.
Wow.
Within 2 weeks, I lost so much mass and so much
Wow.
strength because of this. Um, that's what happened, and that was the point. That was the thing that was like, something is terribly wrong here. This is not normal. Um,
Mhm.
and what do I do like everyone else? Start Googling.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I mean,
Googled,
that's the normal reaction, right?
yeah, we start Googling, which we have to be careful with because, you could easily go into the rabbit hole and it's all downhill from there. And now you end up like you're going to die in 24 hours once
Well,
you
that's
start.
just it, right? Once you start Googling, once and I consider you, Marlon, even though you are an RN and a BSN, I consider you more of an expert by experience, right? I mean, you've lived with this since we
Mhm.
were kids. And you said a very interesting fact, right? When you're taking these shakes, 700 grams of carbs, right, is what you were saying these shakes gave you.
No,
Now, just to put
the
into
shakes, the
perspective,
shakes were the shakes were 300 grams on top of all my food. I'll probably be like eating like 700 grams.
okay, got it.
Yeah.
So let's put this into perspective, right? Because for those living that journey or new to this journey, how many carbs should have you been taking in?
I mean, you could take in 150 grams a day, 200 grams in an entire day, and you're perfectly healthy. Um, so 300 grams, I don't know if I mentioned how many calories the shake was. It was 2,000 calories in the shake. So it wasn't just carbohydrates, it was fats and proteins too. Um, but most people, I mean, 200 grams, 250 grams a day. If you're exercising and you're healthy, you don't have diabetes, you don't have any, uh, illness, I mean, you could take in more, honestly, if you're exercising.
Hmm.
Um, if you're not exercising, you have a sedentary life. Of course, you want to, limit that and watch your diet. but
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, I was taking in a heck of a lot. Uh,
And what's interesting, right, is that a lot of times when you know people think about about diabetes, um, sometimes they have a persona in their head, right? Obesity causes diabetes, all these different conditions that cause
mhm.
diabetes, and they tend to forget, that. there are people that are extremely fit like yourself that are going through, this Livyana journey with diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's something that it's something that we need to keep in mind, right? That, and I tell people all the time, as we live our health journeys, you don't always know what's happening, inside,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of how someone looks. And take a little bit back, when you're talking about how parched you felt, right? You felt real parched at night, and like that drug of just ice cold water being almost equivalent to a drug, and it reminded me of when you came to me. I remember very vividly. You were, hey Mario, I'm really really parched, and and I'm drinking a lot of water. I don't know what's wrong, and I'm peeing a lot. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I thought I was like, hey Marlon, if you're really parched and you're drinking a lot of water, the end result is going to be that you're peeing a lot, right? Because you're drinking a lot of water, you're going to pee a lot. Um, but then you said something to me that I thought was very interesting when you said, no, you don't understand. It's like that scene in Gladiator when he's in the desert being carried through the desert. That's what it feels like. And that's when I told you, that you need to get checked up. That's beyond parched, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't think about what it could be or what it would be or what it is. But I remember that very vividly, and then, you know, as we continue the story, you go through this, you're taking all these carbs, at 12 years old, you saw, a family member, kind of take, insulin and not kind of recognize, right, this could be your future. So continue your story, right? So you're now fast forward, you're parched, you're peeing a lot. You went from 80 push-ups in 2 weeks at one time to not even two push-ups at one time, and within 2 weeks. So what happened
Mm-hmm.
there? Where do we go from there?
So yeah, so I started researching, Googling. I was like, okay, what do I Google? And so I just Googled all my symptoms. I just went to the search bar. Excessive, I didn't say excessive, but peeing a lot, um, fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
weight loss. I just typed in the symptoms, and diabetes came up on the Google search. Um, and I was like, okay, let me check this diabetes. And I had all of the symptoms that were listed except for maybe nausea, vomiting. I had everything except maybe one or two of the symptoms. I was like, okay, there's a good chance I think I have diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I was like, I have to go to the doctor. I have to get this checked out.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty much just ruining my daily life. Like I couldn't function. Um, One thing interesting though that I think happened, which even doctors are kind of surprised, I guess. I don't know. My vision. I wear glasses. I've worn glasses since I don't know sophomore year of high school,
Mm-hmm.
and my vision got so good. I felt like I was Spider Man. I was like, oh my gosh, I can see. And so during the 2 weeks time, I didn't wear my glasses because I had like 20/20 vision. Uh, which just for people to know though, diabetes destroys your vision. Yeah, I mean, destroys your eyes. Um, a doctor told me that it was because the excessive sugar changed the shape of the lens in the eye and so happened to make my vision sharp.
Mm-hmm.
My vision went back to normal as soon as I started getting treated. Um, but yeah, so I Googled, I I looked up diabetes and I was like, okay, I think this is what I have. So I went to the doctor, and it's very easy to check if you have diabetes. It's like a piece of cake. It takes 2 seconds. They'll do lab draws, but they can also do a finger stick. Uh, and they did a finger stick on me. I was fast. I'm sorry, no, they did a lab draw. I was fasted when they did it, and my sugar was over 200 fasted.
Wow.
Um, Fasted, your sugar should be more like upper 80s, maybe. So I was over double
Mm-hmm.
where I should have been. Um, and they contact me. They said, okay, you need to, come in and and basically talk to me and go from there as far as like, what I'm gonna do to treat this, because I
Hmm.
had no idea. I had no idea what was going on. I was like, okay, I got diabetes. It sounds bad, and that's all I knew.
Now, when you were, hey Cynthia, how you doing? When you were going through that, did you immediately think of your 12-year-old experience seeing that individual? I mean,
I
did that just
did.
go boom, just like that? Like, oh crap, like that's me.
Yeah, yeah, I did, and even to this day, I think back about that time when I was like 11, 12, whatever age. I think about, that was gonna be me, and I just
Hmm.
didn't know it. It was gonna be me years from that point. Um, but I saw him managing it. I don't know what his levels were at, but I saw him take insulin periodically. Um, but yeah, I did think about it. I thought about that time I saw that, and I thought about I have to take insulin. I didn't say
Hmm.
insulin. I was thinking injections because I didn't know what I was going to do at the time.
Hmm.
But I was like, I'm going to have to take injections. I'm going to have to inject myself. I hate needles. I have a phobia of needles my whole life. Like getting lab draws for like blood work, I'd always like almost pass out because I don't know what it is. It's not anymore, but back for many years, that's how it was. Um, but yeah, I did think about him taking that insulin and thinking like, wow, I think I'm gonna have to do that now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I know, you know, what one of the memories I remember was when you came back from the dock, and it was, it was really really interesting. Um, hey Alaman, that it was a sense of where do you go next? What do you do
Mhm.
next? Right? It was and what's funny, not even funny. I mean, at the time, maybe funny now
We could laugh at it
is
now.
yeah, is people kind of forget, right, that like when you diagnose a condition like diabetes, right, or like cancer, it also impacts the whole family, right? Because
Mhm.
now it wasn't just like, you going through this as a patient, right? But now it's like, okay, now we're going through this as your care team, right?
Mhm.
And I remember, I mean, we were all lost. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the reality. I mean,
we were all
we
lost.
didn't know a diabetic if we ran into one,
Yeah,
right? Like we didn't know.
because no one else
Um,
in our family had that.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
especially like type one. Like, there's not many type ones to begin with. So.
And I think that's kind of, one of those things that, you know as being your brother and being a caregiver, to you at that time, it was like, well, okay, we eat a lot of bread, right? We eat a lot of tortilla. We ate, I mean,
Mhm.
the Spanish diet, the Latin diet by default is really carb heavy,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So we didn't know what even to eat, right? To try to support you. Like it was a really interesting time for our whole family,
Mhm.
and
I want to say that you're bringing up like what do you eat? Uh, After diagnosis and finding out, okay, well, this I know it's a sugar problem, and now they're telling me I have to watch my sugar like intake. I was like really going through a hard time because I was like, okay, I've
Mhm.
never really looked at nutritional labels that much. I've looked at them, but now I'm looking at them and I was like, I remember one day I was so frustrated and I was like, everything has sugar, everything. Where can I find things without sugar? This was in the
Mhm.
beginning where, sugar, carbs is not necessarily the enemy. You want to be knowledgeable on how much to take in, but I took it as the enemy at the time. I was like, this is like, I can't eat anything.
Oh, I
Um,
remember the frustration level you had.
yeah, it was very frustrating for me. And this was before a lot of education too. So I was still in the unknown. So I knew, watch my sugar, but I didn't necessarily know that I can eat carbs, I can eat sugar. I just have to, manage it, and be, smart about it, essentially.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think that as as you as you continue through your journey, and we continue through that journey with you, I think you're right. Right, as we became educated and as we kind of understood what you could and couldn't eat, um, from that perspective, it became easier, right? And I mean,
Mhm.
that's just the reality. As you continue to live with a condition, right, it becomes easier to manage, um, or not manage if you're just if you're over it, right? Which is a lot of why we built, our platform,
Mhm.
with Livyana, so that you don't get to that hopeless point, right, where they can connect to
Mhm.
people that are going through that journey, right? So, for example, if there's someone on right now, right, that knows someone that has diabetes, right, that's going through this journey, that's getting that frustration, they can connect with Marlon right now on Livyana. He's there and
Mhm.
he's already made a group there to help that happen, right? And I think one thing that I really want you to talk about, you haven't really hit it too much, is you mentioned it a little bit. You hate needles, right? And it's funny, right? A lot of people that I know that are in the medical world as nurses and physicians and all that. For some reason, they all hate needles, but they all like sticking people with one. Um,
Hey man, sticking someone with an IV is a little different. Uh,
yeah, right. But in you hating needles, go through that, right? What was that?
Mhm.
What were you thinking? Where you're like, oh crap, now I gotta stick myself with a needle every day. How do I
Mhm.
do it? Where do I do it? How much pain is it gonna be? Take our audience through that kind of thought process and journey,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's totally new to anyone.
yeah, I haven't thought about that in a while, in years, but I had to start taking insulin. I would take a long-acting insulin once a day, so that's one stick. And then I would take my fast-acting insulin every time I eat carbohydrates, unless it was so little or I was gonna be super active and it was like that. But generally, for each meal, I'm taking an insulin, so it's multiple injections every day. If I'm high, I can correct it with insulin, so that'll be an additional injection. So when I first started taking insulin, I had to, inject myself, and I couldn't do it. So I had my dad do it. And he would give me the injection a lot of times in the back of the arm, which we both didn't know, but the back of my arms are probably not the best to give insulin, given my anatomy and just how I am. But that's what we did. I would try to give myself insulin also, but I would take the syringe, I'll draw up the insulin, and I would put the needle up to my just above my skin, and I would stare at it, and I'll
Mm,
stare at it, and I'll just keep on staring, like just unable to stick it into my tissue. And there were times where I would just stare at it, and then I'll put it away. I wouldn't take it. I'm like, I can't do this, um, because of just that the needle. And we're talking about a pretty tiny needle. It's not like the flu shot needle where it's just like it's like has to go into muscle. It's like big. Uh,
mhm,
but I had this phobia of needles, um, and it took me months and months to really get used to it, where I can just take it and move on with life. Um, but for a long time, I would just stare at that needle, being like, I have to take it, I have to take it. And then I'll tell myself, just do it. Don't think, just do it. And then I won't do it. And it was a back and forth. Um, I don't know if other people have experienced that. Um, I should ask diabetics that I come across. I should ask them. But that's what I went through with this phobia of needles. It was just really scary to me. But I eventually got used to it. And now, so before I would feel it, it would hurt. I mean, I wasn't used to it. Now I don't know if I've, I don't feel it most of the time. There occasionally I'll feel like, okay, that one hurt. But now
Mm-hmm.
it's like nothing. I just don't think and just just do it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it did take me a long time.
And I think now, even at least for type one diabetics, we've come a long way in the wearable markets, right? Where you have like
Mhm,
Dexcom and these other wearables that allow you to kind of inject insulin and do these types of things.
mhm.
Um, so I think from that perspective, it's that right direction, right? That direction of, you know, where once you had to stick yourself with a needle all the time to now you have something that can do it for you for an extent of time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, technology has really improved in managing diabetes. The insulin pumps now are so advanced. They use algorithms to automatically um, give you a little bit more insulin or hold off on insulin, and you have really
Mhm,
tight control with it. The Dexcom with the Freestyle Libre, uh, I mean, those devices, you don't have to prick yourself anymore. You're
mhm,
still you're still putting a device into your tissue. I mean, you have a sensor, but you usually don't feel it, and you don't have to do finger sticks, um,
mhm.
which a lot of people have issues with finger sticks.
Talk
I
about that. I never
Yeah.
really asked you about your journey around the finger. I know, when you first were diagnosed, I would do it with you,
Mhm.
to motivate you, right? To kind of go back to what we stand for, which is you're not alone. I'm your brother, and I'm gonna stand by you, and let's just get stuck together. And I even did my blood sugar and with you with the stick. But
Mhm.
how what was that psychology? Even with me doing it, right? Like it still had to be different for you, because with me it was supporting you. With you is this is going to be the rest of your life.
Yeah, so, like, for you, I would imagine, like, okay, it it doesn't hold as much meaning to me because it diabetes directly affects my health. Like, if I don't take care of
Mhm.
it, I'll die, essentially, like,
Well, what was that
real life,
stat?
I'll die.
Right? Remember that CDC stat, right? Seventh
Yeah,
leading cause of death in the United States is diabetes.
yeah,
Seventh
yeah,
leading cause. So it will lead to that.
yeah.
In amputations and a bunch of other conditions that
Mhm.
you really don't want to have.
Yeah, and so knowing that is a real driving force, at least for me. I have had patients where it's very different, but for me, I've always been health conscious, and so getting diagnosed with diabetes really affected me because I've always wanted to be healthy. Um, so it was a huge lifestyle change that I knew I had to implement. Um, but like with the finger sticks, it's like I know I have to do this. If I don't do
Mhm,
this, all these issues can happen. So I have to do this. And so there's a real driving force to do the finger sticks. And I did them very often because I got diabetes before the Dexcom and all these things were, available to the masses.
mhm.
Um, and so, you stick your finger enough times, you eventually don't really feel finger sticks, to be honest. I don't feel it anymore. But the finger sticks were easier to do for me than the insulin. Um, Much easier because you don't see the needle. It's kind of just like boom, poke out of nowhere. You kind of like, oh,
See
I
a
got
dot
poked.
of blood and you just put
Yeah,
it
and
on.
then you're fine. So that was a lot easier to do. I was able to do that pretty early on. Um, but yeah.
One thing that I think that I kind of want to even learn more about as your brother, right, is you know newly diagnosed, or I'd imagine even not newly diagnosed, diabetes does interrupt day-to-day things that I take for granted,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's going to a restaurant and eating what I want or drinking what I want, to going to a park and not having to worry about food or types of food,
Hmm.
or even a country, worried about access to care at a medical capability, or an emergency capability.
Hmm.
um and tell our audience, right, what was that journey for you? I mean, there was massive disruption. In the beginning, I vividly remember that. And the frustration you had
Mm.
around that. And tell our viewers, how you manage that, right, and how you went
Mhm.
through that.
So yeah, there's a lot of disruption, especially in the beginning when you're not used to everything. You don't really know what you're doing, to be honest. um, so I could be exercising, and I have to check my sugar more often. I'm exercising, I'm using up sugar. Depending on the type of exercise, my sugar can actually increase and go extremely high. Um, and so, like today, I go to the gym and I do some reps, a set, and then I stop everything and go check my sugar.
Mm,
If my sugar is running too low, uh, I have to take a pause. I have to stop. I have to make sure that it's leveled off and it's not going to just plummet on me, and then we end up in a bad situation. And so
mhm,
even today, that's like a disruption every time I go to the every time I go to the gym.
mhm,
I found a routine that really works for me, and so it hasn't been as bad. But still, I mean, there are times where I have to stop, I have to eat some sugar, and when I work out, I want to go all out and don't stop and just keep on going, push to the limit. With diabetes, I don't push to the limit anymore the way I used to. I used to
mhm,
push, to the ragged edge. I wouldn't care if I felt like I was going to pass out. But today, I can't do that. It gets dangerous and it's not worth it. Um, so there's disruption with that. There's disruption with work. Uh, we all have busy days at work. People have busy days where, oh, it's 3 o'clock. I didn't eat lunch. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Or I'm running late and I get to work. I didn't have breakfast and I just got to get going with the day. My job currently is very busy, um, and so there's times where I take my insulin after I eat because I usually don't know how much I'm going to eat. Sometimes I'll eat a lot more than I anticipate, or I'll get very full. And so you're supposed to take insulin. They say 15 minutes before you start eating a meal, but I wait because it varies a lot for me. But I'll be like, okay, I just ate. I'm going to go take insulin. And then some issue arises at my job and I get caught up on that. And then, you know, 20 minutes go by and I'm like, oh crap, I didn't take insulin. And so I have
mhm,
to stop everything. Like I have to, tell my patients, like if I'm with a patient, try to like get away, step away from them, like, uh, and go take insulin no matter what's going on. When I worked at the emergency department, that was extremely difficult with my diabetes, um, because the emergency department was so busy and so crazy. I mean, I didn't eat most like 12-hour shift, 12 and a half hours there, and I'm barely eating. It's a big reason why I left the emergency department. I loved it, but with diabetes, it was very hard for me to manage. There are type 1 diabetics that they work in those kinds of places and they manage it pretty well. It wasn't for me. I like to eat and I like to have a break. So the ED wasn't for me. It was hard to manage my diabetes there. But yeah, so it interrupts your work life. If you exercise, you have to manage that. On days where if I were to go hiking is one of the things that really gets my sugar down. That steady kind of moderate cardio kind of exercise really drops my sugar. And so if I'm going to go hiking, I have to prep for it. You have to make sure I have carbohydrates, I have um, simple sugars, just everything I
mhm,
need in case it drops. I should have a glucagon pen on me, uh, and so there's been days where I've gone hiking and my sugar starts plummeting. I have to stop. We're way into like the trail, and it's like, and I'm like getting a little nervous because like, okay, we have to go all the way back, and like, I need to make sure my sugar doesn't drop on me.
and you could
Uh,
be miles away from the car too, right, at that point.
yeah, yeah. And so when that happens, there's been times even like, I'm walking around amongst civilization, not like on a trail somewhere. But I would slow my pace because my sugar is starting to drop, and I don't have any on me at the time. And so I
Mm,
would just slow my pace. I'm the kind of like, okay, let me not rush because I have a kind of a walk to get to sugar. Um, but yeah, so there's a lot of things that can happen during the day that get disrupted with managing diabetes. But if you're proactive with it and you prepare for it, it's you can manage it fine. It's not too bad. But you always have those situations that come up. It's just a fact
mhm.
of life.
No, now one thing we haven't talked too much about was as you got diagnosed, as you started going through this journey with us as your care team, because a lot of the reality is that when you do leave the physician or the doctor's office, your care team is your family, it is your friends, it's people that
Hmm.
you're around. But outside of that, how was it in trying to find a support system? Because I know you had some difficulty around that as well, where
Yeah.
it just didn't really work out for you the way you thought it would have.
Yeah, for sure. I was devastated actually. Um, so
Wow,
w-
so you were devastated that you couldn't find the
yeah.
that system, and but I it's it's unfortunate, you know, and it's a big reality, among many conditions.
Yeah, so when I was first diagnosed, and I think some weeks had gone by, I was on an insulin regimen, and my doctor said, there's this support group that you can go to. There's other diabetics there, this and that. You could talk to them and meet them. And I'm like, okay, that sounds really good because I don't know what I'm doing. Um, and the day came where I went to the support group, and there was no support. I mean, there was support.
What do you mean by that? Explain to the audience, even myself at this point, 'cause I've only heard stories. I've never really talked too much about this portion of it. What do you
Mhm.
mean by you went to a support group with no support?
Well, so there were the people conducting the support group, but there was no one like me at the support group. I was the only one there. I showed up thinking there'd be like, I don't know, 5 other people.
Mm.
I didn't know what to expect, but there was no one there except me. I showed up to this support group, and I was the only one there. And so that was devastating to me because, I still didn't really know what I was doing. I knew what to do, but I didn't know the details of like when things go wrong. I don't know. There's just a lot to learn with it. But I thought I was going to get some insight into like, what do other people do to manage this situation, or what are other
Mhm.
people's diets like? What is their insulin regimen like? I'm not going to follow what insulin they take, but it's more data that you get on the disease, and like on how other people treat it. You get ideas, and I thought that's what I was going to get there, and I didn't. I was like, I left that place like feeling pretty bad.
So
Um,
you went,
yeah,
you went. So if I were to summarize this, you went, you got diagnosed. We're going through this with you. You hear about a support group. You go to the support group. You're the only one there, and it probably almost feels like a therapy session.
yeah. It was like a I wanted group therapy,
Not one-on-one therapy,
yeah,
right?
not one-on-one. I needed a group therapy. But,
So in
yeah.
essence, you were hoping that you would connect with people
Mhm.
that were experts by experience, like yourself at this point.
Yeah, and, whenever I come across a type 1 diabetic, I don't show it, but I get excited. I'm like, "Oh, man, it's another diabetic."
Sure.
Um, and, I talk and a lot of times they've been diabetic, longer than me. A lot of people with type 1 got it at a younger age than I did. I got it, I was, like, around 20, 21, something like that. So, I'm considered, late type 1 diabetic here.
Was it really 20? I thought
Yeah,
you were like 17.
no. I got to live 17 normal, which I'm glad I did. Um, yeah, so a lot of type 1s, I mean, they'll get it, they're 10, younger, so they've been living with it for a long time.
Mhm.
So they're like the true veterans with it. Um, but, yeah, it's nice to come across another type 1 diabetic or even a type 2 diabetic because I do experience things that type 2 diabetics experience. You get the experience of a new diagnosis, the experience of not knowing what to do, not knowing what you have, lifestyle changes. Um, so there's a lot of, it's almost, I would say, almost identical to any diagnosis with diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some different psychological aspects with it. I mean, I think type 2 is harder in the sense that you've been living your life for in a certain way for so long. That's very
Yeah.
hard to change. Versus, I get it when I'm 20. I've barely lived. It's a easier change in that sense, but a lot of similarities on like, you know, diagnosis aspects and psychological, emotional things that they would go through. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
No, and I think you're right. And out of curiosity, if we would have brought out Livyana when you were going through it originally, how do you think this platform would have changed your experience?
It would be, you know, a tool. Back then, there were no, I don't think there were any apps.
Mm-hmm.
uh, the new smartphones didn't really come out at that time, I don't think. Uh, and so there was only like really like group sessions in person that I had
Mm-hmm.
access to, and there was no one there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with something like Liviana, where uh, it's essentially global. I mean, anyone can connect to it. It broadens, I would say, the probability of you meeting someone that is experiencing what you've experienced,
Mm-hmm.
or that maybe you've already experienced more than they have, and now they're searching for you essentially to support and kind of like say, I know what you're going through, and you can do this and you can manage this, and this is what I do. These are some tips and tricks that I can share with you. Uh, so Liviana is very helpful in that sense. It's a tool that there's many tools to manage a disease. One tool that doesn't really exist, I think, in healthcare really is that emotional support, that psychological support. Uh, Doctors and people, I mean, they can throw meds at you all day long. And who's going to take care of that overwhelming feeling or that lonely feeling like I'm in on this alone? Uh,
Yeah.
I did experience a lot of loneliness because um, I was, as far as I knew in my mind, in my world, I'm the one experiencing this and no one knows what I'm going through except me,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then if I can communicate with another type 1 diabetic and you can share those things and those experiences, and Liviana, it's a platform that allows that.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned it, in a lot of people that I've chatted with, and as we started this journey in building on this platform, it was what you said. I don't want to be alone. I'm lonely, and I'm losing hope, and I'm losing faith, and you know, I'm losing to an extent that love component. And I think you're right. You know, being in the medical side as well, you can throw meds and scripts and all kinds of visits all day long, but that doesn't get to the root of the person,
Yeah.
right? And the root of the person, it's feelings, it's emotions, right? It's at the end of the day, humans are herd creatures. We want to belong to a herd, right? We want
Hmm.
to belong to people that we could relate to. But think about what you said earlier. I get so excited inside when I meet another diabetic.
Hmm.
I even get more excited when I meet a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
Why? Why? Because it's that herd. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
we all want to belong to that herd. And
Hmm.
I can relate to that, right? The ones who do know me, um, you know, I had an obesity journey. where
Mhm.
I lost, 130 plus pounds, right? And much like you, when I meet other people that can relate to losing that weight, right? It's a different world for us because we instantly connect, right? We instantly
Mhm.
understand these are the challenges that we faced, and we wish we had you around, right? Now, I'm fortunate that my
Mhm.
wife was with me throughout the whole journey and all of that, but that's not the case for everyone, and even with
Yeah.
that, other people need more than just that,
Mhm.
and one thing that in saying that, right, that I'm curious to get your thoughts on is, what are the tips and tricks, or things that you've heard in the past? So in a question that came up on our Instagram post, someone that's a type 1 diabetic came and said that people are always suggesting to them these home remedies, right?
I
Always
I
saying,
got
"Oh,
that a
you got
lot.
you got diabetes? Eat that ginger and turmeric. It's gonna
Yeah.
fix it." Right? "Oh, you got diabetes?
Cinnamon.
Hold your breath in a pool for 10 seconds, get out of the pool, tan, eat some ginger, and then do that for a week."
Yeah, 3
Right?
times a day.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. By the end of the day, you won't have diabetes anymore. So what are your thoughts? What are your suggestions, or have you faced that? If you have faced that, how did you take it? I'm sure you have. But give us some thoughts around that.
Yeah, so I get that even to this day.
Oh wow, there you go.
Yeah. Now, when I was first diagnosed, I got it a lot more because, the people that know you in your circle and just people in general now know that you have it, and they all come out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, do this and do that and all this." And so I still get that. I forgot who it was, but they told me, drink this herbal tea, a specific type of tea, do it 3 times a day for 3 months. It's funny how it's like this exact number. It's like 3 times a day,
Mhm,
three for 3 months, and then you won't need to take insulin anymore.
mhm,
And knowing how the disease works, um, it's I mean, it's safe to say like these things may I'm not going to say they don't help with maybe uh keeping sugar levels a little bit more normal and not getting these spikes and stuff. I don't know the data to it though. But what I do know is that without insulin, I'm going to die. Um,
mhm.
and so these home remedies and things that people say, if you understand the what's happening in your body, the like the physiology of it, and the pathophysiology of it, and you understand what's happening in the cells and all this stuff, you hear these things and it's really kind of like, okay, thanks for the info, and then you move
You know,
on.
you said something, Marlon, just now that was very powerful, right? That, yeah, these home remedies that people talk about, whether it's the ginger or the turmeric, do this for 3 months. You know, I commend you for not discouraging it, right? Because you're saying there might be some benefit. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I do know is without insulin,
Hmm.
without that component, I will die,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's an important piece to take away, that while there are traditional remedies that might work or might not work, the one constant that remains in your journey is insulin
Hmm.
and the control of it.
Yeah. And so a lot of people will say these things. They'll also say not understanding the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So type 2
Mhm,
diabetes, I mean, you can essentially prevent it with lifestyle choices,
mhm,
exercise, that type of thing. Or you can manage it with lifestyle, exercise, eating right, like that kind of thing. With type 1 is different. Uh, what's happening in the body is much different. The end result is high sugar. In the end, it's high sugar.
sure.
But what people don't understand, a lot of people that are not diabetic, even type twos, I would say type ones, I think we understand mostly. But a lot of people don't understand that they're different in how it happens. And they think
Mhm,
that, oh, you don't have to take insulin. You can just eat right and eat this and eat that. And, you know, and you'll be fine. But that's not the case with type 1. Uh,
Sure.
um, so yeah, I mean, a lot of people come in with these like home remedies, and yeah, I it doesn't hurt to try. I mean, I would still be careful and consult your doctor about it. Um, but it doesn't hurt to try, because diet and what we take into our bodies is a huge component to health.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of home remedies that do help with things. And so, yeah, I would never like rule any of that out. Um,
Hmm.
but also
No,
just
yeah.
understand the disease for yourself. Like they may not understand it, and I wouldn't be like mean to them or anything and be like, "Oh, that's ridiculous." Um, just say thank you and move on. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
Well, I think you hit a component about nutrition, right? That some I've been catching myself talking about this lately with multiple people, uh, which is your diet, if you do it right, your exercise, if you do it right, that's the natural medicine of your body,
many
right?
things. Yeah.
For a lot of different things.
Hmm.
And I think you're right that's a massive component, and I would imagine that component also feeds into how much insulin you need to take, how
Hmm.
often you need to take it, things of that sort, right?
Hmm.
So while your body still needs it, by maintaining that natural nutrition, right? That natural state, feeding your body, that natural medicine of proper food and proper exercise, I think also goes a long way for you.
It
Um,
does.
and I think that's very difficult for a lot of people to do. A lot of people to do.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that, since we were kids, you were always very, very active and fit. And you're right, you always did push yourself to that next level.
Hmm.
Um, now, we're coming up, to the hour, and in the next couple minutes, the one thing that I kind of want you to talk through or explain is what would be your tips, right? So you're on Livyana, you're an expert by experience, you're interacting with people. But for the ones listening who aren't on Livyana, what would be your tip to them in this journey as a diagnosed person or newly diagnosed person, going through, you know, as I said, can I have a cake or not?
Oh man, you can have a cake, just not a big piece. As they say, everything in moderation, right? Um, now you can you can technically eat whatever as long as you keep your sugar under control. Technically, if you want to really thrive, though, health wise, you don't take that large of a cake. Manage your diabetes. Um, Exercise, build good habits. Um, Getting sleep. I mean, sleep alone really can affect, honestly, your sugar and many things in your body. Um, Getting educated. You have to get educated when you're newly diagnosed. It's very scary. You don't know anything. You can start Googling stuff and get, wrong information. So you do have to be careful with that. But just know that you're going to make it through. You're going to get there. And you'll get to a point where, you know, this is manageable. I am okay. I can live my life, perfectly normal. Um, but also know I do have to watch out for these things and know that you will have bad days. Um, no matter what, you will come across a bad day. You'll have a day where your sugar is doing all sorts of stuff that you don't know why it's doing it. I don't know why it's doing this. It didn't do this yesterday or the day
Hmm.
before, but today it's doing it. And
Hmm.
there's no explanation as far as we know. I mean, there's something going on in the body, but I mean, the body is so complex, and that happens, and that's going to happen. And you have to just know that that's going to happen, expect it to happen, but know that the next day you wake up in the morning, you just reset. Like, okay, we're going to do this again. And I'm going to keep doing what I know I need to do. And as long as I do that, things will be okay. Um, and that's the biggest thing. I do want to say that I've come across many diabetics as a nurse. Um, Many of them don't care
Hmm.
about their health, and it's a big problem in this country. Um, I don't know if this is answering your question, but I do want to mention this that um, people that are on Livyana care about their health. And something about Livyana is that it's not just for the patient, it's for their family and their friends. Um, and those people can also give support for like emotional support and things like, like you can, you, Mario, you can go on Livyana and you have experience with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
You know someone that lived it. And so you have some knowledge and uh, the ability to go and speak to someone and give them that support or connect them. You can be like, hey, I know this person that has what you have.
Hmm.
Go talk to them. So that's another thing. And I think I went on a tangent there, but yeah, as a newly diagnosed diabetic, you're gonna get through it, and talk to your doctor. Uh, there is no magic pill, unfortunately. Uh, there is no cure, and you'll come to terms with that. When I was first diagnosed, I was in shambles. I was like, "There's no cure. I'm gonna die." All sorts of stuff, because I really cared about my health. Um, but come to terms, there's no cure. Um, Hopefully, there will be. We don't know. But there's technology, there's knowledge in the medical community, and we know how to treat it and take care of it so that you can live to be 100 years old. There's no
Hmm.
reason today in 2022 that a diabetic type 1 or type 2 should have any issues. Um, and now there's other things in the healthcare system that I'm not going to get into that make it more difficult for some
Sure.
people. But the knowledge is there. We know how to treat this and take care of it. So definitely talk to your doctor. Find a good doctor. Uh, Search for a good doctor. Don't settle for any doctor. Um, I've come across a lot of bad doctors. So do your research. Go see them. Don't think you have to stick with them. Okay, because some doctors are supportive and some not so much. So that's something also very important to find, especially when you're newly diagnosed. So you're going to come across the first doctor you see, and they're going to tell you everything, and that's that. So if they're good, stay with them. If you don't feel comfortable with them and like in a supportive, like they are supporting you and really care, find another doctor. There's very good doctors out there.
Yeah, and to close out, there's something that you mentioned a little bit ago, which was my sugar was doing this, now it's doing this, and now it's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
This was yesterday, now it's today. And one of the things that I've learned in my Livyana journeys is, a lot of times people say it's year by year, and then month by month, and week by week, and day by day, and hour by hour, but a lot of times it's minute by minute, and you have your good
Mm-hmm.
minutes and your bad minutes, and you got to cherish the good ones when they come across, and you got to get over the bad ones when they come across.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for people to understand that a lot of times, if it's minute by minute, you have a lot more good minutes than bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And at times it'll be a roller coaster. They
sure.
talk about, you get these highs and these lows, and emotionally you get these highs and lows, and your sugar gets these highs and lows. So
Yeah, there you go.
just ride the ride and be persistent. And just stick to it, and things will be okay.
Yep.
Hmm.
So, Marlon, any last words before we close out this day in celebration in memory of however you would
Mhm.
want to say it of World Diabetes Day on Monday?
Um, if you ever come across a diabetic, uh, don't go to them and say, you can't eat that. Don't ever tell a diabetic that, especially a type 1 diabetic, because a type 1 knows what they can eat and not eat. Okay. Uh, that's
That's
something.
deep. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's deep, right? Because that you're supposed to make like close out comments right now, but that what you just said right there. That's a very deep thing, right?
Mhm.
And I think, to be honest, Marlon, that's not just in the diabetic journey. That's in a lot of health journeys. Don't tell me what I can and I can't do.
Yes. Don't set limitations on people, because even if they shouldn't do this or that, uh, telling someone that is not supporting them. It's making their life harder. Uh, Inside, they may feel like, this tug of war of like what I should do and not do. And by someone coming to them, telling them that, I don't think it helps them at all. And it's not a supportive thing to say. It's sort of like, "Ah,
Yeah,
don't eat that." And this is not even a doctor or a physician saying it, it's a random person.
sure.
So be careful how you speak to people about their conditions. Just be mindful of you know of what they may be going through. They may not be showing it, but they may be going through a lot. And if someone like a type 1 is going through a lot in the moment and they're told this, that can really affect them negatively. So just, you know, keep that in mind.
Well, I was on a show recently, and it was around mental health. And one of the things that I mentioned in that show was that just because they look okay on the outside and laugh doesn't mean that didn't shatter them on the inside and they're crying.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people tend to forget that. Whether it's family, whether it's friends, or whether it's strangers. And the whole goal, of our platform is so that people are reminded to live because you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Live because you don't have to feel lonely. There's somewhere you can go to connect with people like you, right? People like Marlon, if you're a type 1 diabetic or a type 2 diabetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
People like me, if you're going through obesity and you're trying to get through it, right? And I think that a lot of times people forget the mental health perspective of a condition.
Yeah.
And that comment to the wrong person could be the worst decision of their
Yeah.
life.
You don't know if they will, if that night, then you see them that day, you don't know if the night before they were crying
Yeah.
because of this new diagnosis.
Yeah.
And they could be going through a lot of crap on top of the stressors of just life that,
Yep.
we all experience. And so that's something to really be mindful of. But on Monday, also, I think that what a lot of people can do is on social media, just show your support for diabetes. Um, do research for foundations that are, to donate to for research, diabetic research, um, and just kind of like post things on your social media, on IG, on Snapchat, whatever it is you use, supporting diabetics and diabetes awareness.
Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. This is the end of our show. Martin, thank you for being on and sharing your journey with the audience on this live broadcast. And I think the biggest message, that I think we could all take away from, for newly diagnosed patients and even ones that are going through it is go minute by minute. And for the ones that are supporting, remember what you say could be taken in the wrong direction with the person going through it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you all. Everyone have a great, blessed Saturday. And that is the end of our show.
All right. Thanks.